Save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth. For strangers are risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set God before them. Behold, God is mine helper, the Lord is with them that uphold my soul. He shall reward evil unto mine enemies. Cut them off in thy truth. I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good, for he hath delivered me out of all trouble. And mine eye hath seen his desire upon mine enemies. Welcome to today's Bible study on Psalm 54, a poignant prayer of David, written during a time of deep personal distress. In this psalm, David faces the bitter sting of betrayal, yet through it all, his trust in God's protection and deliverance never wavers. Psalm 54 is a powerful reminder that even when people fail us and circumstances seem impossible, we can call on God's name for help. This study will break down each verse, offering insight into how we can face challenges with courage, knowing that God hears our prayers and is faithful to deliver. The first verse of Psalm 54 opens with a plea, "Save me, O God, by your name, and vindicate me by your strength." David is desperate. He feels the weight of persecution, but he does not despair. Instead, he calls upon the name of God, trusting in his strength and sovereignty. The phrase "by your name" refers to the character of God, his holiness, his power, his justice. David knows that God's name is not just a title, but a symbol of his faithfulness to act in his people's favor. In times of trouble, it's important to remember the power behind the name of God. When we call on his name, we tap into that divine power. David's call to God for vindication is also a cry for justice. The enemy he faces has falsely accused him, and David feels wronged. Yet he knows that only God can bring justice, and he is confident that God's judgment will prevail. David's example shows us that we don't need to take matters into our own hands. When we're wronged, we can trust God to act on our behalf. In verse 2, David continues, "Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth." David's trust in God is evident as he petitions for God to listen to his cry. What is particularly striking about this part of the psalm is the betrayal David is facing. His enemies are not strangers. They are likely former allies or people he once trusted. "For strangers have risen against me, and violent men have sought my life. They have not set God before them." The sense of betrayal adds weight to David's sorrow. David is not merely dealing with a physical threat. He is struggling, emotional pain, and the deep wound of being forsaken by those he once trusted. This psalm speaks to anyone who has felt betrayed or abandoned. David doesn't hide his feelings. He brings them before God. This transparency in prayer is a model for us. When we face betrayal or abandonment, we can take our feelings to God and trust him to give us healing and justice. David's plea continues in verse 4. "Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is the one who sustains my soul." Here, David shifts his focus from his enemies to the faithfulness of God. Though his enemies have risen against him, David is confident that God is his ultimate defender. He acknowledges God's role as the sustainer of his soul, not just his physical life, but his emotional and spiritual well-being. This is where the heart of Psalm 54 lies. It is a psalm of trust and dependence on God. In times of difficulty, we may find ourselves emotionally drained, but God sustains us. He is not distant or passive. He is actively at work, upholding us with his strength. As we move into verses 5 to 6, David declares, "He will repay my enemies for their evil. Cut them off in your truth." Here David confidently places the judgment of his enemies in God's hands. The language of "cut them off" reflects David's request for God to bring an end to the actions of those who seek his harm. God's justice is always righteous and perfect, and David believes that God will handle his enemies with fairness. David's confidence in God's justice is a reminder that we don't need to carry the burden of vengeance. God will act justly, and when he does, it will be right and true. This is a powerful message for those who feel wronged or oppressed. God sees, he knows, and he will act according to his perfect will. In the final verses of Psalm 54, David offers a sacrifice of praise. "I will freely sacrifice to you. I will praise your name, O Lord, for it is good." David acknowledges that God's name is good, and that goodness compels him to offer praise, even before his deliverance is fully realized. This is a profound act of faith. David praises God before seeing the full extent of his deliverance. This calls us to reflect on our own response in times of trial. Do we praise God in the waiting? David's example is a powerful one. Praise is not only for the moments of triumph, but also for the journey of faith and trust in God's goodness, even in the midst of hardship. As we conclude Psalm 54, we are reminded of the power of prayer, the trustworthiness of God, and the peace that comes from resting in his justice. Just as David called out to God for deliverance, we too can rely on God's faithfulness in our times of need. His protection is certain, his justice is sure, and his presence will sustain us. Let's remember, no matter how dire the situation, we can trust that God will deliver, whether through immediate action or the peace of knowing he is in control. As we reflect on Psalm 54, let us carry forward David's confidence in God's ability to handle our adversaries and our fears. Thank you for joining us in this study. We hope it has encouraged you to trust more fully in God's deliverance and to offer praise in every circumstance.